Let's talk about Mackenzie Dern and Tom Aspinall, and in particular, Tom Aspinall's dad, who 18 years ago left his job and pursued coaching Tom Aspinall full time. And this is very important to understand because we live in a world where everything has to be about results driven. In other words, you tell your kids that you want them to be happy, you want them to pursue whatever it is that they want in life, but at the same time, what you really want is security and assurance in whatever it is that they do. It's going to be lucrative. They're going to be able to pay for, let's say, feeding their family. They're going to be able to provide whatever it is that they need in order for them to get on with life in general. Tom Aspinall's dad took the biggest risk in his entire life, all because he really truly believed in his son, his skills, and his capabilities. And not only that, his future prowess that really, up until last night, nobody really saw coming. So this is really important to understand that Tom Aspinall's dad did something that most of you out there would not ever dare to do. And so because of that, I think that requires a lot of praise. And not only a lot of praise, but a lot of advice that I think you could take from Tom Aspinall's dad. Now, once again, full disclosure, you got to understand something. Not everyone's life is created equal. And also, outcomes are not created equal as well. You can have the same amount of effort, the same amount of risk as the next guy trying to get to the same particular goal, but it's just not going to work out from one guy versus the other. And that can fall into many things, factors that are beyond your control. Perhaps maybe even an aspect of, I don't know, a little bit of luck, if there is such thing as luck in this world where it just seems like anything can happen at any given time. And that goes with good and bad scenarios and whatever it is that you're anticipating in your life. So we don't give a lot of credit for guys like Tom Aspinall's dad. Reason being is because, like I said in the beginning of this particular content in this video, I said that we live in a society where everything has to be about results driven. Meaning that, well, all right, I dream of being a rich guy one day. Well, are you rich right now? And the answer may be yes or no. And if the answer is no, then guess what? Your wish doesn't really matter. You talking to the world, saying that you want to accomplish a particular goal doesn't really mean anything until you can actually do it. And then in the process of trying to get to that goal, guess what? You're going to have a whole bunch of people that are never going to believe in you. So this is very interesting to really understand from a human interest point of view that we all can relate to. Because let's be honest, when the fighting is done, when the fighters take their belts, take their paychecks, they take their corners with them, fly halfway across the world or halfway across the United States, that Monday or that Sunday, which is right now, you're not going to be living that life with those fighters. You're going to be living your own separate lives. But in the midst of that, it's really important to take lessons from what it is that they did on a Saturday night. But more importantly, the lessons that you have to learn that led them to preparing for that Saturday night. And this is the main story that we are talking about right now. Not so much of the kicks and punches, not so much of the fact that Tom Aspinall's dad is a jiu-jitsu black belt, trained up his son to be as such, and we got the results that we were looking for based on that hard training that he's been through over the years, the preparation, but more so importantly, the new methods that he started implementing in his life and in his repertoire of training and training partners and training environment. So it's not so much about all those things. It's about the fact that you have Tom Aspinall's dad, who, from what I hear, and I'm not sure about this because I didn't do a lot of research into Tom Aspinall's family, but it's safe to say Tom Aspinall's dad is a single dad. Now, where is the mother? We don't know. We don't know much about it. We can't speculate one way or the other. You can't make an Andrew Tate type of video about this because you want to assume the worst of, let's say, Tom Aspinall's mom, and then you take the dad, who's the hero of this story, as some sort of hero that I guess the Chads of the world and the red pill community would look at as to say, well, you know what, he came from this type of environment with perhaps maybe a toxic woman, and then he raised a world champion son, and we're now going to politicize that into these matters at hand. Now, we don't know too much about that, but what we do know about the human interest story of this, and by the way, I'm going to get to Mackenzie Dern after 6 minutes of literally talking about Tom Aspinall and mentioning her in the beginning of the content and wondering how will all this relate. Well, for one, you got to understand, what Tom Aspinall's dad did would break a lot of men. It would lead them to say, you know what, this whole MMA thing is just absolutely ridiculous. How many people do you know that are trying to be rappers, are trying to be comedians, are trying to be actors, or whatever it is that they have this big goal and big dream that seems impossible or far-fetched to reach? A lot of them give up. During the summer, I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. Right now, I'm in Sacramento, so I go back and forth from Los Angeles to Sacramento. And I can tell you, Los Angeles in particular, is filled with homeless people in the streets that have failed dreams. And what do I mean by that? You got people that are from the Midwest, people from Europe, people from across the seas, come into Hollywood, California to have a dream of becoming the next Tom Hardy, or becoming the next Vin Diesel, the next Arnold Schwarzenegger, the next Paul Walker, the next Bruce Lee. And lo and behold, they failed for one reason or another. Now, that could be because of the fact that they took a calculated risk in spending all of their money to move to LA, and after moving to LA, depleting all of their funds with no results to anything that they were trying to accomplish. Because, let's face it, it's a very hard goal. You're an actor or an aspiring actor in Los Angeles, and how many of them that are like that? You look at the traffic that goes into LA. These are some of the things that go into my mind as I'm sitting there in LA traffic. I say to myself, you know what? How many people that are in this highway, failed actors trying to get to their next studio audition? LA is full of them. So you got to understand, it's the city of broken dreams to a certain extent. It's also a city where, let's face it, it's highly populated. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody wants to show out. Everybody wants to be noticed. But also, aside from the entertainment aspects of things, there's also the business networking world that some people want to infiltrate in order for them to, let's say, land a lucrative job, land a big business deal that's going to make them millions or prosper them into the next level and whatever that may be. This is what LA is full of. Not everybody makes it because everybody is chasing it. So at some point, you realize this and you say to yourself, it's probably time to go out there and get a normal job. Just like everybody else, work a normal job. And by the way, this is a common story with a lot of fighters on the way up. Chris Weidman has mentioned this. And by the way, I've made videos about Chris Weidman in the place where I'm literally passing by right now, right by the Sacramento River, where I shot that particular content regarding Chris Weidman's last fight and how I basically compared him as the Orlando Anderson of MMA. And if you want to look at the reasons as to why, go take a look at the video on the section below of the video section of this channel to see everything that I talk about in there. But back to Tom Aspinall at hand, and his father in particular, because we already talked about Tom Aspinall's great accomplishments and this great moment of time that he was able to accomplish and that he was able to obtain yesterday in New York City, a place where literally a lot of born English fighters one day dream of performing at in the highest stage of their combative sport, whether that would be boxing or MMA. Tom Aspinall has done that. But the real story of this whole entire content is his father taking the risk, taking the time to invest in his son. Now, this transitions into Mackenzie Dern. The father of Mackenzie Dern is also a highly touted jiu-jitsu black belt and a jiu-jitsu player. So, like Tom Aspinall, she has grown up around martial arts. She has a male figure in her life, like Tom Aspinall, a father figure who's present, who teaches her things, but not only that, promotes her in a way that is really important to their careers, in the advancement of their careers. Because you have to understand about combat sports, you can't do this alone. There was a time where I thought, okay, maybe you know what? You can train on your own, you can do things on your own, you can win fights on your own, but in reality, you can't. That's just not the way of the world. It's not the way things are. Because there are factors and voids that need to be filled while a training session is going on, while a training camp is going on, while you're in your recovery phase. And on top of that, you need people around you to manage your daily schedule, your interviews, your contract negotiations. And if you were to do this all by yourself, you would have to concentrate on not only just your training, but also these other aspects that have nothing to do with fighting, but at the same time have so much to do with fighting in ways that you never really understand until later on. And what do I mean by that? Well, when the ticket sales come and you're in the regional scenes, you're trying to sell tickets for people to come out and buy your fights and check you out. You don't have all the people that are out there buying your tickets. You don't have the proper eyes, the proper views, and the proper promotion. And then sometimes it gets worse to the point where you have the least amount of preparation going into a fight because of all these situations you have going on. So, why is Mackenzie Dern's performance lacking if she has a father figure like Tom Aspinall, who's also a martial artist, who also brought her up as somebody to be ready in this world of prize fighting and fight at the highest level? At some point, Tom was a prospect. He passed through that already. He's now a world champion. At some point, and still to this point, Mackenzie Dern is a 30-year-old prospect. Because we keep giving her chances after chances. And all of a sudden, last night, it just looked like she was malprepared against a former champion like Andrade. Now, we have to take into consideration she has some life issues going on. She had a divorce case going on. And by the way, make of that as you will. Also make of that as you will with the situation of her actually being accused of abusing her man or her ex-husband, who, by the way, is a famous surfer. Not a fighter, not somebody who's a trained martial artist, not somebody that understands the level of stress and the level of hardships that Mackenzie Dern has to go through as a fighter. Maybe as an athlete and as a competitor, he understands the nervousness the worrisome that you have to go through before a competition. But let's be honest, right? Surfing is a dangerous sport, but it is not like fighting. It's not as dangerous as fighting, especially if you know what you're doing in the world of surfing. You were trained your whole entire life to get on a board, ride waves, and it becomes second nature to you. Sure, some waves are more dangerous than others, just like some opponents in the fight game are a lot more dangerous than others, just like Andrade. She's probably way more dangerous than most of the other opponents that Mackenzie Dern has faced in the past, and that's the reason why she is a former world champion and a 26-fight UFC veteran at that. But still, it's different circumstances that you're dealing with. You are fighting a person, not a wave. A person that is even more fluid than the water. A person that can change their mind quicker than what an ocean and what the sea implements and wishes to do on any particular given time. So, in other words, fighting a human being is way more unpredictable than fighting the oceans and the waves that somehow has some sort of set of motion that you can understand, that you can get ready for, that you can get used to while you're getting ready for these waves. But in the world of fighting, you can have all your ducks in a row. You can look great, which, by the way, Mackenzie Dern looked great in the middle of the fight. But out of nowhere, she just made one mistake and it failed her miserably. To the point where now we have to question everything that she does as a person in her training camp, as a person, not just as a fighter, but as an overall human being, in her actions and what she does in her daily life that we can criticize from to really understand why she is at this position right now. But you also got to understand this. Somebody like her, for a lot of people, they want to see her do good. Why? Well, for the same reason why she's very marketable. And I think you know exactly where I'm going with that. The problem is, we don't live in a comic book world where the hero and the heroine are the main characters and are going to rise above all these challenges that they face. It's not a Rocky movie. It's not a fictional film. It's not the Warrior movie with that MMA movie with Tom Hardy where he fights his brother. It's not any of these things. It's not Halle Berry's movie, Bruised, where she ends up fighting a person played by Valentina Shevchenko. It's none of these things. This is real life. And guess what? In real life, just like Tom Aspinall's dad, you could take all the risks in the world, just like what he did, and you're going to come up short in some way, and that's a possibility. So where am I going with this in relationship to Mackenzie Dern after telling you the backstory of Tom Aspinall's dad and his risk that he took to gain this incredible result, becoming the world heavyweight champion of the world? What I'm trying to say with this whole thing is that no matter what kind of risk you take, no matter how people believe in you, maybe sometimes some things are just not for you. Now, am I saying that MMA is not for Mackenzie Dern? I don't know. I don't know if that's what I'm saying, because she is good at it, but there's a ceiling. And when you reach that ceiling, you got to ask yourself, where do I stop? Yes, I'm literally calling for Mackenzie Dern's retirement. Or fight down a level. Or fight in another organization that doesn't have this level of stiff competition. Because guess what? Even though Tom Aspinall and his father came out of this whole entire story with a happy book ending. A happy ending to a happy story and whatnot. At some point, there's going to reach a limit for Tom Aspinall, and you have to come to grips with that. Right now, he is the best heavyweight in the world. Not named John Jones, of course. But is John Jones his limit? Are these other heavyweights that he hasn't fought yet his limit? Is Curtis Blades' limit? We've seen a portion of that before. They had that lackluster fight where he ended up getting injured mid-fight, and we never really got to see much of what can come about Tom Aspinall when he deals with a high-level proficient wrestler in Curtis Blades. We have yet to see him fight Stipe, so we don't know how he's going to do with an experienced guy like that. Plus, Stipe is a little bit old, so even if he was to win that, guess what? You would criticize the fact that Stipe is an old man and shouldn't be there. But then if he loses to him, then you're like, well, you see, this is where his limits are. So at some point, he has to understand where his limits are. I think Mackenzie Dern, right now, we're trying to understand where her limits are, and perhaps maybe some of us are seeing it. Maybe she's not seeing it. Maybe others in her camp are seeing it also, but don't want to tell her. Or maybe my opinion on this particular matter is wrong. But make no mistake, you got to understand, at some point, you can't keep making excuses for your favorite fighters, because they either can or they can't at a certain level. Right now, Tom Aspinall and his dad can. They rose above poverty. They rose above destitution. They rose above being able to now pay their bills on time, not getting their lights shut off, not getting their internet cut off, not being able to eat without, let's say, having food stamps and whatnot, or getting welfare. But the bottom line is, as human beings, no matter what inspirational story you draw from, you got to understand your limits. Because if you don't, then you're going to devastate yourself in a very detrimental fashion. All because you've made a mistake in analyzing and calculating your risk. But some people, they actually rise above that calculated risk and come out on the other side with the spoils of war. Whereas with the others, they come out of it on the other side, devastated, never being the same again, and regretful of the choices that they made. But by the end of the day, let's put a